All right, outside. I like it outside, and we've been having a bunch of rain, so it's nice to see the sun. Anyhow, been seeing good bit of talk, people trying to figure out Pelosi. I've had my own kind of theory about a lot of this for a while, and I'm gonna have to go back a little bit to explain, kind of where I, get my feeling on where things are going, could go. Can't be always 100%, while there's so much deception. I mean, it's off the charts. So you decipher, you just, go by gut feeling. You match stuff up, you triangulate, and you get a picture. But the truth of the matter is, what we know about history is total false. It's because of the control system. And you're seeing it breaking down. That's why a lot of people in the media and on the deep state side, bad side, cabal, whatever you want to call them, bloodlines, they're all looking crazy as shit. And they're wrong about everything. They lie just daily, every freaking minute, basically, and it's being exposed. I believe it's the awakening, and there's a lot of processes that could be causing that. But anyhow, what I'm doing this one on, and hopefully it doesn't take too long, is just call it spy versus spy history and who has flipped. How far back do we have to roll this? I mean, to be honest, you could go all the way back to the beginning, but I'm just gonna, just go back to the beginning, the start of the 1900s. The revolution. It's been a constant battle between the control, which, a lot of it has to do with the central bank type system. It's the Babylonian debt slave system. In the old days, they called it money magic, and magic, and I get sidetracked all freaking time, but anyhow, magic, we look at it like, David Copperfield and all this stuff. But the satanic side, or whatever you want to call it, their magic has a lot to do with just putting stuff out there, and deception, and they have a karma type thing that if they put it out there and we can't figure it out or whatever, then the karma goes on us. Anyhow, I covered that in the last video. All right, so in the early 1900s, we go back to there. They had a meeting with the Rothschilds, and that was over there in London. There was, it was about the Federal Reserve, or them starting another bank, which Andrew Jackson was the only one to ever get the central bank out and keep them out for a while. And they tried to kill him, but he was a tough old bastard, and they couldn't kill him. So you see that Andrew Jackson is on Trump's wall, and that's important. All right, so they had a meeting with the Rothschilds. It was about the Federal Reserve with 300 American industrialists. They all agreed America didn't need it. So, apparently this meeting kind of went, they might have thought they could talk them into it or something, or maybe, bribe them or say, hey, you can get this, that, whatever. But they wanted to stay sovereign. They wanted the U.S. to stay sovereign. They knew you give up the money system, especially a debt-based system like they're pushing, you lose sovereignty. And so they said they didn't want it. Well, it's kind of like, I guess the bankers over there, they shook hands. They said, oh, okay, no problem. We'll maybe talk about something later or something. So then the industrialists, they had a ride back. on a big boat, and it was called the Titanic. And they all loaded, and it was getting ready to set sail, and the actual owner of the boat off-boarded, J.P. Morgan. And we know what happened to the Titanic. Now, it wasn't even the Titanic anyhow. It was the Olympic. That's proven. That can be researched. Whenever I get the ability where I can attach things and stuff like that, I mean, I've got pictures and things, but the boat that's on the floor of the ocean doesn't have the right amount of windows for the Titanic. It matches the Olympic. The amount of what was it? The way the stacks are angled. Anyhow, I'm not going to get all into that right now, but the Olympic was damaged in port. It was hit by a ship. It was a naval ship, and J.P. Morgan tried to get it fixed through the Lords of London, and they declined it. I'm not sure exactly why. So a lot of these things that end up happening as false flags or whatever, they do it for various reasons. So this is kind of an insurance freaking claim deal. And they show the ship in port when the Titanic was finishing, and the Olympic was in there being repaired, and they switched the names. They just had the name on the front of the boat, so they just repainted it, and there's actually evidence of that, that blatant. Anyhow, we're just to explain that for a second. So we all know what happened there. Well, later that year, and I'm going to skip over things because it would take days to explain the last 100 years in total detail, but then the Federal Reserve was voted in later that year in 1913 in Jekyll Island, and that was during a Christmas break, Congress break. So I mean, it really didn't have anything to do with our government to begin with, of course, and they call it the Federal Reserve, but it's a corporation. Then we'll just jump to Prescott Bush with the World Bankers and everything. They were working with Hitler, and Prescott Bush was doing financing with Hitler. And some of the white hats in Congress brought up charges against Bush. The plea bargaining made a stipulation that no one in the Bush family would ever hold public office. I guess they knew what the plan would have been. So over time, you had Project Paperclip spread the Nazi leadership around the world. A lot of that's what we're dealing with. And they had talk right after World War II about starting the EU. Well, you see who's the head of the EU, Germany. All right, but it's spread all around. It was spread all around the world. After you had the Trilateral Commission, you have all these, the World Bank, you got freaking CIA, IRS, all these three-letter agencies are basically part of the control system. We don't need all that. And so, I'm just going to jump from that to Korea. Well, the White Hats, see, you had this going back and forth. You have good guys and bad guys, and this is going on throughout the world, and you see, Iran's getting ready to, be freed. Russia, I just heard this morning that they're changing their government to match more of what our founding fathers wanted originally before it all got corrupted. So Russia's kind of going to a republic based on what our founding fathers want us to be. So in Korea, our generals were perplexed as how their plans were, it seemed like they were being ambushed. And, these are smart, smart generals and everything. They're like, well, these North Koreans act like they're in our playbook. They know what we're doing. So they put out some disinformation through different channels. And different disinformation, that's a way to find out where your leaks are. And you see the White House been doing that for 2 years. They come to find out every time before they did a military operation, they had to send all their plans through the UN. That was under the guise of being a humanitarian type thing where they could come in and help out. But after the fact, what was happening was they were relaying the information to the North Korean generals, and they knew exactly where we were going, what we were going to do, and they were ambushing. And that, I guess that had gone on for a while, and it was because they wanted to keep the war going, and they've always wanted wars, and that's where the wars are coming from, because it's big money. They can have the terror going on. They always want our energy level low. They want us being negative as possible. When we're positive, it doesn't work in their favor. And so the generals, when they figured that out, a lot of them, in the military, you'll see, and I don't, it's a camaraderie, and you feel proud of your country and stuff like that. And you go through a lot of shit in the military, so you're doing it for your country. The generals, they never forgot. And so they are part of the White Hats. And then kind of explaining the white hat, black hat, good and bad, and there's a lot more white hats than we would have expected. And then there's a hell of a lot of corruption, and it's just everywhere. So it's a big freaking war behind the scenes been going on. Let me see where we're at here. Yeah. The white hats were pissed off. All right, we're going to jump to the 80s and the 90s now. The mobs in New York, they got, they're getting to the point that they were, taking control and, started Las Vegas and working with Cuba and stuff like that, I believe. I'd have to really get into that, but that'd be another rabbit hole. But anyhow, the mobs are getting, real strong in New York, and they were taken down. They were taken down, and I'm just doing this by memory. So these are some of the names that helped take them down, and they should be kind of familiar to people watching what's going on now. Giuliani, Barr, Rosenstein, Mueller, Comey, Trump, Durham. There's a handful of more that I just can't think of that are right involved with what's going on right now. And Mueller and Pelosi had what people were calling, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, a love affair for years. I think it was 9 years. And if it comes out, I'm not 100% positive, but this is kind of the way I've been feeling for a while, that Rosenstein, Mueller, Comey are on the sting side of it, like it's a big massive sting operation, which is all legal. And see, if Mueller is a sting agent, he knows everything going back to 9/11, because they brought him on as director of the FBI, I think a month before 9/11. Now, Bush Sr. might have thought that was a good move, and I don't know if maybe he got flipped later, but he had already helped take down the mob, so he may have been, infiltrating right from the start. I mean, it's possible. Now Trump and Durham, Comey. Let me go back to Comey. When I see Comey on the TV, not so much lately, but during the Mueller stuff that was going on, he just looked like an idiot, a total freaking idiot. And I'm just like, how can he, get to be FBI director? Now you see a lot of that with Pelosi now too. He's like, what the hell, she can't even freaking talk, she can't, she's about ready to fall off the stage, In my book, that's just showing, and it's throwing the media off because they don't know what the hell to think. Now Trump, they say was part of the takedown of the mafia because he was the insider and he knew what was going on. So he was an FBI kind of informant, I guess you would say. Well, we all know that Whitey Bulger was an FBI informant. Now you got his son tied up with all this stuff going on in Ukraine. Bulger, when they said that they killed him in prison, they pulled him. The dude was some badass and everything, and he pulled him away from the camera and then beat him to death. That always seemed kind of screwy to me because if you wanted to send a message, you would do it in front of the camera. Why pull him away from the camera? So, I mean, a lot of stuff just doesn't add up. All right, and so you see, Trump was he helped the FBI in all them investigations in New York. Now you see what's happening. And if you look at it in that point of view, you might see it that way, you might not. So I've been thinking Pelosi has been an agent for the White House for a while. And I could be wrong on all this, but I mean, it's just, all this stuff is starting to come to a head, and it's just interesting on how it's unfolding. And I still haven't given up on Obama. I mean, I think he was a CIA asset from the get-go, from very early with his mom's connections and everything. But even though you're MK Ultra or whatever they do to them, and they go through a lot of brainwashing, some people could pull out of it, and I'm hoping he did, because I always thought that he was, if he had the ability, that he would do what Trump's doing. And but he was, I just don't think even if he wanted to, he could have, in his situation being so close to the swamp creatures. But, I could be 100% wrong on that too. But if you don't look at different angles and you just stick with one thing, you'll never get to, you see something and it rings true to you and you can put it together, because you'll never see it because you're all on track and way. Now, it seemed like there was one other thing that I want to bring up real quick. Farrakhan. When I first started researching the deep state and all this 8-9 years ago, I watched a good bit of speeches in Farrakhan. And, the media calls him whatever, and he's probably said things, like white Satan and against the Jews and stuff like that. And it could either been taken out of context or maybe he really meant it. But I've seen a lot of his speeches where he's saying the white people and black people, we're all in this together. It is the leadership, it's this, it's that. And he was on the deep state a long time ago. I mean, he's a brilliant man, Farrakhan is. He knows all about, the Federal Reserve, and he's been holding their feet to the fire for a long time. So being out of Chicago, and then Obama come out of Chicago, and Chicago's corrupt as hell, but he he could have been kind of picking up on what Farrakhan was saying, and that might have helped him flip. I don't know. And that's it on this one. And out here.